Hey there, I'm Chris Ames, your art instructor, and welcome to Paperbread Studio. So in the last video, I talked about two of the most fundamental aspects of art, line and shape. And I gave you some tips on how you can use them to structure your drawings and make your art more exciting for people to look at. So in this video, I'm going to give you some action steps by offering you a few easy exercises that you can use to practice drawing lines and shapes on your own. If you do these consistently, your drawing will begin to get better and better every day. So go grab your sketchbook, a pencil, an eraser, and let's dive into this together. Alright, so before we begin, we're going to need a few extra tools to use in these exercises. Here you can see I prepared a ruler and the rim of a mason jar lid to use for outlining a few circles, though you could also use anything such as a large roll of tape or any other round, circular object to create your outline. I'll also be using a pen and two pencils, a 6B and an HB. You may also want to have your eraser handy, but just keep in mind that the goal in these exercises is not to be perfect right out of the gate. It's to work on building confidence in your drawing ability through the use of repetition. No matter how your lines and shapes look at first, just keep at it. The sketch pad I'll be working on is sized at 12 inches by 18 inches, but any drawing pad or piece of paper will work. Even if you only have an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of computer paper available, that is totally fine. You could and should do each of these exercises I'm about to demonstrate multiple times on separate sheets of paper, both back and front. For the sake of this demo, I'm going to lay them all out on one page in my own sketch pad. So first I'm going to divide my paper approximately in half using my pen. Then I'm going to divide the left side in half once more before adding in two parallel lines at the top, one twice as long as the first. So our first exercise is about honing in on our ability to steadily retrace over the track of a previous line. Here I'm going to go over my previously laid out line freehand as many times as possible. Don't worry if your line wobbles a bit, just keep working at it. Try to go slow at first and then speed up gradually as you repeat the process. So next let's work on pencil control by turning our pencil to the side and making lines that run parallel to the previous line you created. Placing your finger firmly near the sharpened point will give you more control as you draw with your pencil in this position. Next, let's try creating short, quick strokes over a previously drawn line. This way of creating lines will help you when you begin to dive into sketching. Working like this gives you flexibility in your initial approach and allows you to feel for the line instead of committing to a single mark right off the bat. When you finish this exercise in your first line, try it out on an empty area of your paper, maybe somewhere above or below another line for reference to work on your freehand skills. Alright, cool. So now that we're getting the hang of it, let's work on creating single point-to-point lines. Place points across from each other on your paper, and then connect them using one single stroke. Again, if your lines start to get wavy or wobble, don't even worry. The best way to approach drawing your lines is to draw from your elbow and not from your wrist. When you can learn how to use the entire range of motion in your forearm, your lines will become straighter. Place your elbow in a position that rests near the center of where you plan to place your line, almost like creating the letter T. Then draw your line from point to point. It helps to look at the point where you anticipate your line will end. Where your eye goes, your hand will learn to follow. So let's follow up that exercise with point-to-point curved lines. Try to connect your points using lines that curve upward first, then do the same for lines that curve downward. You can use the same techniques as in the previous exercise by focusing on the range of motion in your forearm and looking at your connecting points as you drag your pencil or pen across the paper towards it. So next let's work on broken lines. This exercise is more about the use of your wrist than your elbow. Create two points that sit across from each other on your paper and then draw quick, straight marks across the paper to connect them. If your lines end up looking a bit staggered, that's okay again. Take your time. So our next exercise is less about the lines themselves and actually more about placing our focus on the negative space that lies between our lines. Create lines that run parallel, but try to place each of them within equal distance of each other by only using your eye. Training ourselves to not only look at what we're drawing, but also the negative spaces in our drawing is imperative, and it will help you a lot when drawing from life or creating your own expressive works of art. Alright, so let's talk about our line pressure. Getting a good feel for the relationship your pencil has with the paper as you make your marks can greatly improve your drawing. You can achieve a lot by just focusing on how hard or light you're pressing as you make your marks. Try creating lines first by pressing hard into your paper and gradually releasing the pressure as you drag your pencil or pen. See how dark and light you can get in a single line. Repeat the process again, starting light and then pressing harder as you move across your page. So let's work on some freehand curved lines that dip down and then back up. As you draw your lines, try to think about the space between them and use your eye to track the same flow of your previous lines to achieve a sense of consistency within those negative spaces. We can do the same exercise by creating wavy lines that dip down and up more sharply and frequently as well. Remember to follow the movement of your previous lines. Let's try this out with zigzag lines that break into sharp points instead of waves too. Practicing each of these exercises will develop your muscle memory and train you to have consistency within your mark making. Alright, cool. So now that we have these under our belt, we can draw curvy lines using 3 points of contact. Draw 1 point on one side of your paper and 2 on the other. Then create curvy lines that begin close together at one single point and then fan out as they extend to the opposite side. Think of the flow of your lines and how the negative space begins small and then widens as you drag your pencil or pen to the opposite side of the paper. Try to focus on maintaining an equal sense of space between the ending points of your lines. So next we're going to go ahead and use our mason jar lid to outline a circle with our pen. If you don't have a lid like this handy, feel free to use a drawing compass or anything round like a roll of duct tape, the lid of a peanut butter jar, or the opening of a cup or a bowl to create your outline. Then use a ruler to create a square with 2 lines that cross through each other from corner to corner. For this first line exercise with the circle, we're going to focus on creating curved cross-contour lines. Draw a small point in the center of your circle using your pen. Then with your pencil, begin to create lines that curve from that center point outward. Draw lines first that consistently curve down all around the circle. Begin them closer together and end them further apart, similar to the way we practiced in the last exercise. As you work on your curved lines around the circle, you may start to notice that some areas just feel easier and more natural for you to draw. If you're used to using one hand predominantly over the other, it's just natural for one side to be easier to do than the other. If that's the case for you, feel free to turn the paper as you need. Following the path of least resistance will help you build confidence in your line making, so as you practice, follow your flow. Once you've completed your lines around the circle curving one way, follow the same exercise drawing cross-contour lines that curve outward the opposite direction. Once you've completed your cross-contour lines around the circle, let's move into our square area. Here we'll follow a similar practice, but our goal is to draw lines outward from the center point that are all straight instead of curved. Again, work on maintaining a sense of consistency here. Some of your lines may end up a bit curved, but that's totally alright. Just keep working at it and feel free to rotate your paper as you need. Alright, so now it's time for us to start drawing some shapes. Using your ruler and a pen, divide your paper into sections that are approximately equal in space. For the first part of this exercise, we're going to focus specifically on drawing ovals. Try to draw ovals using one single line instead of using quick, sketchy strokes. Work on making ovals that are equal in size, touching both the lines at the top, bottom, and the edge of each previous oval. As you move along, you can begin overlapping the previous ovals to create a chain-like effect. If some of the ovals are less than perfect, no need to adjust them. Just focus on the repetition and keep moving forward. Alright, so next let's do the same exercise but with circles instead. Work on creating circles that are equal in size with the edges touching the previous circle as well as the top and the bottom lines. Begin to overlap them as you proceed, just like you did with the ovals. So let's try the same thing with triangles. Again, work on making them the same size using single lines and overlap them as you continue to repeat the process. In the last part of this exercise, let's do the same thing with squares. If some of your squares look more rectangular in shape, again, don't worry, no need to erase, just repeat as much as possible. No need to overlap your shapes here, as the parallel lines may tend to become a little bit confusing. Just draw as many squares as possible that are equal in size or as close as you can get. So for the next 2 exercises, let's use our jar lid again, our ruler, and our pen to divide up our paper into a square or rectangle on one side and a circle with a point in the center on the other. If your lines end up crossing into each other like the line going through my circle here, no worries at all. Again, it's about focusing on the practice within these shapes rather than how they are arranged on our paper. Now let's work on practicing our hatching and cross-hatching marks within the square or rectangular area that you've created. Remember from the previous video on Introduction to Line and Shape that we not only need to focus on our lines, but also the space between our lines. The closer our lines are together, the darker the area appears. The further apart, the lighter it appears. Begin in one corner with your lines close together, then as you draw them diagonally through the rectangle, begin to space them apart more and more. Repeat the process from each corner so that at the end, the middle of your square appears to be the lightest. For this next exercise, let's work on drawing circles around a central point that begins small and then get larger as you work outward towards the original outline. Work on creating an equal amount of space between each of your circles and draw as many as possible within the space. Alright, so here we are at our last exercise, and we're going to practice drawing point-to-point spirals. On your paper, begin drawing 2 points with your pen or pencil. Make sure there's plenty of space between them. Once you have your points placed, begin drawing a spiral line that radiates out from the left of one point and finally connects to the other point at the end of your spiral. Remember to think about the space between each curve and try to create as equal amount of a distance as possible. And of course, feel free to rotate your paper as you need. Repeat this exercise as many times as possible, working on creating spirals that begin to radiate outward going the opposite direction as well. If your practice exercises begin to overlap, there's no need to worry. Again, focus on the process here and you know you're going to get the most out of these warm-ups. Once you have these 18 exercises under your belt, you'll be able to express yourself more effectively in your drawing and be on your way to becoming a better artist. And as I mentioned, for demonstration purposes, I've laid these all out in one single sheet of paper, but I do encourage you to practice each of these as many times as possible on separate sheets of paper, both front and back, if you want to get the most out of them. Alright, so the exercises I just demonstrated are the same ones that I use to get better at my own drawing. Keep in mind, repetition is always the key to getting better at anything, and feel free to look back at this practice video and the last video on line and shape as much as you need so that you can get these techniques solidly under your belt. And as always, make sure you go easy and be kind to yourself. Everybody has different strengths and weaknesses, but nobody knew how to ride a bike the first time they got on it. We're working here together to build up your understanding of this visual language. The more you do these drawing exercises and train yourself to look closer at things, the better you will get. If you want to practice these techniques while drawing from an actual image, check out my next video where we're going to use line and shape together to draw the human eye. And if you enjoyed this video, check out my website and Patreon page links below. All your support is so greatly appreciated. Thank you so much, and until next time, stay curious.